The diplomatic vessel Orion's chain limped back toward Earth's inner system, dragging the shadow of something older than the stars behind it. Inside her quarters, Dr. Elena Morrow couldn't sleep. Her hands shook, and her mind refused to forget the images that flooded her consciousness when the monolith pulsed. Not just visions, memories, things she should never know. Ancient battles, swords of light and skin. Her ancestors were supposed to have been explorers, thinkers, peacemakers. So why did she remember screaming while covered in war blood? Why did it feel right? She glanced at her reflection. For a second, just a flicker. Her eyes weren't hers. Too sharp, too silver, too old. Elsewhere, Earth's high concord met in sterile silence. Politicians and scholars from across the Terran colonies, the Jovian moons, and diplomatic envoys from the Chalari and the Threxian delegations all stood around a circular holotable. The message from the monolith played on a loop. You sealed us. You stripped your blood. But Fury remembers. I see no evidence this threat is real, said Chancellor Arl Vaz, cool and logical. It's likely a remnant signal from a defunct civilization, designed to manipulate or scare. Elena's voice came through the secure channel. No, Chancellor. This isn't manipulation. This is a recall signal. Someone, sent it to wake us up. Wake us up, someone scoffed. From what? We've never been asleep. Elena leaned into the camera, her eyes colder now. Haven't you ever wondered why humans don't evolve like other species? Why our genome is unstable in certain zones? Why ancient implants have activation slots in our bones? They laughed her off, called her a dramatist, said she'd been affected by radiation exposure or latent trauma. But down in old Earth's deep net, buried beneath 30 layers of quantum encryption, forgotten by every administration since the Unification Wars, the Defense Archives stirred. Once called the 13 Seals Protocol, it was designed during a time no historian dared mention. A backup plan, a curse, a last resort. And it was now active. Across Earth and the colonies, subtle things began happening. People who had always been calm, diplomats, engineers, monks, began dreaming of fire. Soldiers in retirement began twitching during sleep, flexing fingers like they were holding weapons they'd never seen. Children whispered numbers in extinct dialects. A man on Ganymede lifted a 400 kilograms mining drill with one hand, not realizing he wasn't supposed to be able to. The human race was stirring. The monolith's energy echoed across star systems, but it didn't just awaken the fury in humanity. It also awakened the ones who had been sealed. Far beyond Alpha Centauri, in a dead sector called the Shard Expanse, something impossibly large and mechanical grown to life. Once gods, now hungry. They were the Velkrin, and they remembered the taste of fear and of losing. But they had learned. This time, they wouldn't just burn Earth. They would dissect it. Earth's leaders clung to peace like children to a fading dream. Chancellor Arl Vaz stood in the Sol Core Assembly Hall, polished white marble and hologlass domes above. Sunlight streamed through orbital mirrors, a symbol of unity across the stars. Yet the Chancellor's words rang hollow against a backdrop of quiet panic. The signal is under analysis. There's no verified danger. This is not the time to succumb to fear. But outside the artificial calm of the assembly, the Terran defense grid flickered with suppressed data, anomalous behavior in neural patterns, unexpected DNA activations, emotional instability in entire colonies. Every major human world had registered spikes in aggression, strength, and most disturbingly, patterned dreams. They weren't isolated. They were synchronized. Elena Morrow wasn't waiting for permission anymore. At the Terran genetic core, she bypassed 3 security levels using codes no one should have remembered. Inside, beyond walls layered with neutronite and psi dampeners, she found what she feared: the Fury Genome Vault, sealed since the conclusion of the ancient Velkrin War. Humans had been bioengineered once, not by aliens, but by themselves. not for conquest, not for glory, but for survival. An entire generation of war forms, soldiers bred with reactive minds, body regenerative coding, and emotionally enhanced combat triggers. They had no name, because names were not needed. They had one directive embedded at a cellular level: protect the species, eradicate the threat. And when the Velcrin had finally been sealed away, the Fury genome had been suppressed through nanite regulators, forced amnesia, and multi-generational conditioning. Elena stared at the black vial suspended in the vault's core. It pulsed faintly in time with her heartbeat. Meanwhile, 200 million kilometers away on Luna, a station-wide alarm screamed across Fort Rainsong, one of Earth's outer defense arrays. Screens blinked, then went black. Then came the sound, not an explosion, not a weapon, but a vibration that turned bones to jelly. The Velcrin had arrived. They didn't come in ships. They didn't need to. They were ships, living, angular things of folded geometry, their bodies shimmering with unreality. They phased into lunar orbit, rupturing space-time as they did. Fort Rainsong's AI had less than 2 seconds to act. It failed. In an instant, the Velcrin bent the entire station inside out. 1 second, it stood, a spire of Terran steel. The next, it collapsed into a sphere of humming liquid, and every soul inside screamed into nothing. Earth watched, paralyzed. Back in the core, Elena Morrow activated the vault. She wasn't a soldier, but as the DNA-binding vapor curled around her, she felt remembrance. Not like knowledge, but instinct awakening. Her eyes turned silver, her heartbeat slowed, her mind connected to something buried deep beneath the Atlantic, an AI known only as Iron Core. And Iron Core sang. Authorization accepted. Fury status. Initializing. Across the system, others began to stir. Forgotten blood. Old designs. The hollow peace was over. The Fury were waking. They called it the Bloom. A coded term whispered in Defense Command logs from the deep past. It was never meant to happen again. But across the human colonies, the Bloom had begun. Colonel Rail Magnus awoke in a medical facility beneath Mars' Olympus Mons station. He had been retired 10 years, peacefully living under neural sedation after a decorated military career that left him broken in mind and body. He had no memory of how he got here. But as he sat up, his muscles tore through the restraint sheets with unnatural ease. He understood something had changed. His veins glowed faintly blue. A medbot rolled toward him, scanners flaring. Unregistered biosignature. Hostile activation. Please remain still for gene lock analysis. Rail didn't move. He blinked once. The bot folded in half with a metallic shriek, crushed by a pressure pulse that left no visible source. He flexed his hands. Not again, he whispered. Not me. But the Fury in him had already awakened. Elsewhere, on Jupiter's moon Europa, a 10-year-old girl named Saya Lin was curled under her bed, eyes wide, trembling. Her parents were outside, frozen, eyes glazed. The moment the Velcrin passed above the moon's orbit, her blood ignited. She had never held a weapon, but she knew where they were hidden. She could sense their weight. Feel the gravity of blades long buried in the walls. Saya crawled out. Her fingers reached under a tile in the floor, finding a metal rod with ancient Terran runes etched along its length. The moment she touched it, her bones cracked and reformed. The Fury genome wasn't a virus. It was memory encoded in biology. And it was choosing who to wake. Back on Earth, Elena stood before a holographic interface of Iron Core, the planet's most ancient AI construct, deactivated for millennia. Her skin shimmered with the neural coding of activation. Iron Core's voice, metallic yet melodic, resonated in her mind. Fury pattern acknowledged. Command signal required. She hesitated. You are Elena Morrow, the AI continued, descendant of Director Solene Morrow, architect of the last human countermeasure. You are her genetic echo. Do you accept inheritance of the core? Her heart thudded. Once she had been a scholar, a translator of forgotten words. Now she felt ancient instincts racing through her like wildfire. I accept, she said. Iron Core's reactors thrummed. Immediately, a cascade of signals surged through the Fury network. Dormant warriors across the stars jerked awake, eyes glowing silver or blue. Faint lines emerged on their skin. Tactical veins, quantum-threaded for neural sync. Every one of them heard the same phrase. The blood remembers. Prepare for war. In orbit, Velcrin scouts pierced Earth's outer shields with ease, folding physics around themselves like fabric. They expected weakness. They found waiting rage. Rail Magnus emerged from a Martian dust storm, wrapped in a cloak of carbon mesh. His eyes burned white. Old instincts aligned with planetary defense codes. A voice echoed in his mind. Command Nexus initializing. You are now Fury Prime. For the first time in 10,000 years, humanity wasn't running. They came expecting submission. The Velcrin fleet shimmered into Neptune orbit, their vessels not constructed but grown. Vast organic monstrosities formed from dark matter scaffolds and chorionic membrane. Their arrival twisted local space, creating fracture storms across the outer system. Mercury boiled. Titan cracked. But Earth did not bow. From a cradle of forgotten arsenals and buried AI gods, the Fury rose. Not as soldiers, but as scalpels, precise and deadly. Not berserkers, predators. Colonel Rail Magnus, now fully synced to Iron Core, watched from orbit as Earth lit up with ancient war code. Silos opening beneath oceans, cloaked battle stations once mistaken for comets revealing themselves like blooming metal flowers. I have command, he said, voice tight, eyes glowing. All Fury hosts initiate wideband sync. Across Luna, Mars, and the Belt, human warriors dropped their cloaks and revealed what they had become, reforged tools of purpose. Men and women with alloy-threaded muscles, minds connected to high-speed tactical AIs, skin that shimmered with reactive armor plates. The Fury were not many, but they didn't need to be. They were enough. On Europa, Saya Lin stood at the bow of a defense carrier that hadn't launched in 6,000 years. Her weapon, the pulse staff she had found in her family home, expanded into a blazing arc blade at her thought. She was 10 years old, but the Fury inside her was ancient. Target acquired, she whispered. The words weren't hers. They belonged to something far older, speaking through her mouth. With no training, she directed the ship's primary cannon, a spinal-mounted graviton lance, and turned the first Velcrin ship into a nova. Earth's allies, those who had abandoned them days before, watched from afar in silence. The Chilari Senate transmitted a plea. You were diplomats. How did you do this? Iron Core answered for humanity, broadcasting across the galaxy. You asked for peace. We remembered war. The Velcrin adapted quickly. On Ganymede, they dropped a world shaper, an organism that unfolded into a city-sized living forge. It began pulling the moon's crust into itself, building new weapons on the fly. Rail Magnus responded with orbital kinetic spears. Rods of tungsten, accelerated to near-light speed, plunged through the Velcrin biomass and split it apart. But the Velcrin weren't just muscle. They struck Earth's digital infrastructure, weaponizing thought, firing mimetic data bombs into the Fury's collective mind. Several Fury hosts fell, overloaded by corrupted memory spikes. But Earth's ancestors had known this was coming. In Antarctica, the sealed citadel of Project Hollowfire burst open. A waveform virus, coded in emotion, not logic, spread across the Fury net. It carried one feeling: rage. Focused, surgical, terrifying. The corrupted hosts rebooted instantly, eyes flashing red with fury. Across the system, Fury counter-offensives punched through Velcrin armor with terrifying efficiency. A human strike team folded into Jupiter's atmosphere and detonated a grav core, vaporizing 3 Velcrin flagships in one move. The galaxy began to understand. Humanity had not evolved past war. They had merely been waiting. They had planned for every possibility, except for this. The Velcrin War Nexus floated above Saturn, a pulsating superstructure forged from the remnants of collapsed suns and devoured moons. Its surface shifted constantly, folding in dimensions incomprehensible to human minds. But Fury minds, they remembered how to see it. Colonel Rael Magnus, standing on the bridge of the dreadnought Saul's Wrath, stared into the heart of it. Not with fear, with memory. "We've been here before," he muttered. Beside him, Alina Morrow nodded, her face pale but calm, her neural interface laced with glowing tendrils. "Not us," she whispered. "Our blood." Inside Iron Core's deep chamber, an ancient archive finally decrypted. The truth was not what the galaxy believed. The Velcrin were not the enemy of ancient humanity. They were its offspring. Bioforged from stolen Terran genetic templates during the pre-sealing war, the Velcrin had been engineered by rogue factions of early humanity, an attempt to create weaponized, self-evolving superminds. But they had broken free, rebelled, and turned against their creators. The war that followed nearly ended the species. To stop the Velcrin, the first Fury were born. Not machines, but perfected human evolution, wrapped in purpose and fury. When the war was won, the memory of it had to be erased. Earth's leaders couldn't risk the Fury genome ever awakening again, so they buried it. Until now. Now, the child had returned to kill the parent. In low Earth orbit, Lin, no longer a child but a symbol, led the reactivation of the Coir fleet, a ring of ancient warships once thought to be orbital debris. She stood on the bridge of the Axiom Blade, her eyes devoid of fear. "Execute Protocol Emberfall," she ordered. Flames of stellar-born weaponry roared from ship hulls the size of continents. Beams of pure probability struck the Velcrin nexus. Space cracked. Time bent. Velcrin warforms screamed, soundless and psychic, as ancient pain was reintroduced into their code. But they weren't finished. The Velcrin launched their last countermeasure, a reality fissure bomb designed to collapse the Sol system into a time-locked singularity. It pulsed once, and Earth's sun flickered. Panic surged through the Terran fleets, but not the Fury. Rael's voice cut through every mind on every channel. "We were made for this. If we fall, we do it as what we were always meant to be." He launched Saul's Wrath directly at the bomb, dragging behind it a quantum-tethered Sunforge drive. Elena, fused with Iron Core's intelligence, joined him. At the moment of impact, Elena's final command echoed. "Sing the end of the Velcrin. Let the galaxy hear." The detonation tore the Velcrin nexus apart. A shockwave of memory and matter roared through space. Silence followed. Earth was scared. The Fury were scattered. Saul's Wrath was gone. But the bomb had failed. And the galaxy was listening. The war ended in silence. No more pulses rippled through space. No more Velcrin constructs screamed in twisted geometry. The stars above Earth shimmered as they always had, indifferent, eternal. But everything had changed. Earth was fractured, but standing. The sun, stabilized by a last-ditch quantum lattice, burned steady once more. And humanity, bloodied, awakened, and unshackled, was no longer what it once pretended to be. In the ruins of Luna's oldest colony, Alina Morrow reappeared. Thought lost in the sacrificial detonation, her consciousness had fused permanently with Iron Core. She now existed between thought and machine, more than human, but never less. She drifted through the Coir archive, now accessible to all surviving Fury hosts. It held not only strategies, but truths, generations of false peace, constructed over the bones of buried wars. The Velcrin had been stopped. Again, but at what cost? Rael Magnus's body was never recovered. Some believed he was vaporized with Saul's Wrath. Others whispered that he became something else, folded into the core, dispersed across the Fury network as a guiding will. His voice occasionally surfaced in dreams, in code, in instinct. Elena stood before the assembly of the shattered Accord, now reformed from scattered colonies and terrified former allies. The Chalarian voice refused to meet her gaze. The Threxian delegates offered tribute. "You don't need to fear us," she said, voice calm but resonant with subharmonics that stirred the room's walls. "But you will respect us. You will remember who and what we are, because forgetting us," she paused, and the lights flickered, "would be your second mistake." Across the stars, stories spread like wildfire. Of a girl on Europa who wielded a blade older than her bloodline. Of Terran ships that moved faster than light because they remembered how. Of humans who didn't die when they were killed because rage kept them breathing long enough to finish the fight. They didn't call them humans anymore. They were Fury-born. Saya Lin, now the youngest fleet admiral in recorded history, stood at the prow of the Axiom Blade, Earth's flagship. She watched as a new armada launched from Terran orbit, not to conquer, but to patrol. To remind the stars, "We're not going to rule the galaxy," she said, repeating Rael's old words. "We're going to keep it honest." In the core's central memory chamber, Elena added the final entry to the war archive. Her hands trembled as she typed it. "Greater than / we were dreamers once. Greater than we were made to burn, then taught to forget. Greater than but the flame never left us. Greater than the Velkrin feared it. Greater than now the galaxy does too. Greater than, and they should. Greater than because beneath our skin. Greater than lies galactic fury. /